Hey guys, it is Marcus and Terry with you today, and today we are talking about why alcoholism sucks, which it does. We're going to talk about what life is like as an alcoholic. Let me make sure that I am streaming on the right one. Yes, I am. Cool. So, how is everyone doing today? Hopefully, you like the new lighting. I went to take a picture of the new lighting, and I noticed somehow, some way, my phone camera got cracked. So, that's not fun. But at any rate, it's just a phone. All right, so how's everyone doing today? Type in the box in the comments if you guys are listening. Looks like Crystal says, hey, Marcus and Terry, I'm from New Brunswick, Canada. I got 112 days sober. Awesome. Congrats on that. Good to see you here, Cassie, and everyone else hopping on as well. Sorry we're late. A little bit of issues before we got started, but we are ready to rock now. Let me see if I need to move the picture a little bit over. There we go. That should be better. That way I don't walk off camera too much. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what life is like as an alcoholic. What is it like being in the grips of alcohol, feeling like alcohol is your only way to cope with everything life throws at you? We're going to talk about that because I've been there, Terry's been there, no doubt a lot of you guys have been there, and we want to kind of share with you what's going on, what happens, and how to get out of it. So, Terry, do you want me to start, or do you want to start? We can kind of share our story.
Go right ahead, Marcus.
All right, cool. So, I am almost sober 5 years. I quit drinking in, I think it was May 24th, 2014, and I quit drinking because I had to. I didn't really... I wanted to quit drinking, but I didn't want to at the same time. And the reason was because I felt like it was the only thing that worked for me, the only thing that helped with anxiety, the only thing that helped me deal with the mental struggles, the only thing that helped me deal with depression, the only thing that made me able to work, the only thing that made me able to function. And it was very difficult. I remember my days would look like I would wake up and I'd be drunk and I'd be miserable and I would be unhappy. And
I'll be right back, Marcus. Sorry,
Yep.
I got to take care of the cat.
No problem. And I felt like nothing was working. I felt like, how am I going to get out of this? I remember the feelings of depression, the feelings of anxiety. Anxiety was off the chart when I was drinking. Everything just kind of spiraled downhill. And what happens with alcohol is you get these feelings and they gradually get worse, and alcohol gradually stops making them better. Alcohol stops helping, and you get in the pit of despair. How many of you guys have been there? You felt like the pit of despair. You've been like, I don't know how to deal with this. I don't know how to cope with life. I don't know what life is like sober. And for an alcoholic, life sober is one of the scariest things in the world. It's like you're taking away the only thing that I know how to cope with. You're taking away the only thing that I can hold and feel normal, or quote unquote normal again. And it's very, very difficult. Now, what we don't realize is that alcohol has actually caused a lot of these problems. You see, before alcohol, I was a pretty okay guy. I'd get a little bit of anxiety at social situations, but it was nothing major. And what I noticed was that little bit of anxiety, when I drank, it went away. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, right? But I was really only drinking to cover up a tiny, tiny bit of anxiety that I'd lived with my entire life that wasn't a big deal. And then when I started drinking, it started lowering my anxiety levels. It'd lower them, and then, or actually it'd make them higher, right? They'd get worse. So I'd drink, and then the next time I'd go to social places where I'd be anxious, my anxiety levels would be a little bit higher, so I'd have to drink more. Fast forward a couple of years, now I have to be pretty much plastered by any standard means of the word, although I was functioning, and it was like I had to have it. And it was very scary. It was very difficult to realize, hey, life is out there without alcohol. And I remember that being terrifying. I remember one morning I woke up and I was hungover, felt like crap. And I remember, like, to start my day, I had to drink. I had to. Like, it wasn't Marcus is a drunk and he likes to drink in the morning because he's a lunatic. I actually felt like I had to. I felt like it was more important than breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was more important than putting on decent clothes to go outside. And I was out, and I literally, my wife hid the keys that one time, and I literally walked. I don't even think I had shoes on. I just walked to the liquor store because I was like trembling. I have to have my alcohol. And that's what life is like as an alcohol dependent person. You feel like you are completely dependent on alcohol. And there's studies shown, we're not doctors, so we don't know the fancy terms. Definitely go to a doctor, they'll give you the fancy terms and tell you what to do. But you literally feel like alcohol is what keeps you alive. And it's a terrifying feeling, it's a terrifying thought. And that's also part of what makes me not drink, because I don't want to go back there. I don't want to be completely dependent on something. I don't want to be obsessed with alcohol anymore. And for the last almost 5 years, I haven't been, and my life has changed. A couple weeks ago, or I think it was a couple days ago, I was thinking about alcohol, but it wasn't in a way like I have to have it, or I need to have it, or I even want to have it. It was just like, okay, well, I saw a lot of alcohol that week, therefore my brain thought about it, and I didn't think too much of it. But being an alcoholic, being stuck in depression, being stuck in a cycle that doesn't ever stop, being trapped thinking that you need this to live. It's like someone who maybe they're in an abusive relationship, right? And the guy or girl just beats the hell out of them, and terrible situation, happens all the time. Very bad thing. Definitely need more awareness about it. But you have someone who's abused, and they feel like they have to have that person. They're like, this is what I have to have. We're together. I have to have this. And from the outside, you look at them and you're like, but he hurts you. But this person is doing wrong to you. And they're like, well, I have to have it. That's what alcohol is like. You feel like, hey, this is doing bad to me. And people are looking at you and they're like, this is damaging your life. This is messing you up. And you're sitting there and you're like, I know, but I have to have it. And we're here to show you that you don't have to have it. You don't have to be in the grips of alcohol. You don't have to succumb to it. Alcohol doesn't have to be your master anymore as it was mine for so many years. And we can overcome it. We can outgrow it or outlive it or look at it differently. And I think that it really starts with a change of life philosophy. Because what happens is alcohol puts you at a base level of living. You're at that base level, and you're kind of like someone who's starving looking for food. When you're starving and looking for food, your body chemicals change so dramatically that you'll do things you never thought you would even think about doing to get that food. You look at, like we talked about last week, the people in Venezuela that are starving, and they're looking for food, and they're doing crazy things like eating out of a trash truck, right? And you're like, I would never do that. And it's like, well, when your chemicals are changed and when you're at a base level animalistic thinking, you probably will do those things. And oftentimes we look at it in terms, I think psychology terms, they call it the power of the situation. And the power of the situation that alcohol puts you in is terrible. Now, if you're dealing with an alcoholic and you want to tell them how to get out of this, you have to first understand that they can't see a way out. They don't see hope. They don't see light at the end of the tunnel unless there's a bottle of rum at the end of the tunnel. That's the only thing they can see. And it's not so much that they're selfish or they're terrible or whatever. I'm sure some people are selfish and terrible, and that's another topic for another day. But for the most part, an alcoholic has been hijacked by the animalistic desire. And now instead of saying, hey, I want food because I'm hungry, or I need this, or I need air to breathe, they are now thinking, I need alcohol to live. And it's almost like, someone gets their head held underwater or they can't get out of water, and they're gasping for that next breath. And they're like, I need to get that next breath or I'm going to die. And that is really, truly what an alcoholic feels. So, Terry, what are your thoughts on that? Or your story or...
Great. No, I agree with everything you were saying. Alcohol definitely hijacked my life. Before we get to that, there's so many comments here. Crystal, we already said congratulations to you for 112 days. Naomi, 428 days. Awesome.
Nice.
You back. And you said, I'll always remember my worst day when I was drinking to remind me to never, ever, ever drink again. I don't remember my worst day. That's how much of a drunk I was, but I don't ever want to go back there again. Sick 8 staying 250 days. Neil, 4 months. We got a bunch of people on here. Chef Pete, 82. That's awesome. And Megan,
did you get Veronica? She got 95.
Veronica, I missed it. Good job, Veronica. And then Megan said that you drank last Sunday, but just like Neil told yourself, don't beat yourself up. Just get back on the program. That's awesome. Crystal says she can't hear me. Can you guys hear me? Hello. Anyways, type it in the box if you can hear me or not. For me, drinking started very early in life, and it's up to. Oh, you can hear me. Okay, it's up to me, I guess, to decide if I was an alcoholic from the get-go or not. I don't think so. Although, being a heavy drinker from the beginning, maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But life really didn't have too many consequences. I had the occasional consequence here and there, just as a troublemaking kid. But in college, drinking got even heavier. Got out of college and the drinking, it was part of my life pretty much every day, but was it heavy? I wouldn't say it was terrible. And alcohol, it really wasn't a tool to deal with my anxiety. I just liked it. I liked drinking all the way to the very end. Um, a lot of people, alcohol is a tool to escape, and maybe it was for me, maybe it wasn't. I don't really remember as far as me having to have a drink because I wanted to be more comfortable and going to a party or something like that. It was always part of it. So I don't know. I do know that every once in a while I would not drink at a party where everyone else is drinking, and I had a great time. My cat is meowing in the background, and I don't know why. Sorry about that, folks. But um, as I went on through life and got into my 40s, drinking became very heavy, and I started to want to hide it, and that was what took up so much of my time or so much of my brain. All I could do was just try to hide the fact that I was drinking as much as I could, and drink as much as I could, and that just completely hijacked everything. That was my top priority in life, was the alcohol, and I'd hide it in every different way possible. The AA Big Book has all these different examples, and I probably did all of them. And then I figured out what worked the best way to hide my alcohol and hide when I was drinking and what I was drinking. And of course, it never worked because we smell like alcohol when we're on it, even if we don't think we do. But the consequences started to build, and then my whole life was about the consequences, and once again trying to get out of them. And
Yeah.
this is how alcohol just takes over. This is what makes alcoholism suck, is all these terrible things that happen. But the only thing I can think about is, other than the obsession of trying to get out of the trouble, was I would focus on the feeling good part of the alcohol. And even though eventually alcohol, my drinking just came down to watching terrible TV, like Dr. Phil or something like that, with the big old bottle of vodka in my hand. And that's what I was turning into, was just to sit on the couch and watch TV and drink and maybe walk my dog, which my dog is the kind that needs a walk every day, and just pushing everybody out of my life. And I thought things were going good. I that This is what alcoholism did to me, is it made me think that everything is okay, and it wasn't. I was starting to get financially into trouble, and I've driven everybody out of my life. I stopped visiting my family. I wouldn't answer phone calls. It's just became a dark life, and it was just no way to live. And that's alcoholism. It really sucked, but it's now that I've been sober for almost 5 years as well. Life's great. And I look back on those experiences, and they were terrible, absolutely. But do I regret having gone through what I went through? Maybe, yeah, a little bit, but not entirely. It's what made me who I am today, and I really enjoy my life right now. And I've done a lot of work to get that way, and that's the way. That's what sobriety can do for us, is we can just get better and better. And
Yeah.
I'm going to ride a 100-kilometer bike ride this weekend, and that's the first of 500-mile bike rides I'm going to do this summer. And so you can do anything when you get sober and you stay sober and you work towards it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it's a good.
It's interesting too because we have to really look at it because a lot of people talk about regret and things like that. And while I don't necessarily regret alcoholism, like I'm like whatever, it sucks that that's what had to wake me up because I was a stubborn ass who wouldn't wake up any other way. I do regret the things I did and the people that I hurt. That part I do, but I also look at if anyone drank as much alcohol as I did, they probably would have been in the same place I was. Like you have to look at that and you have to really rationalize. While I don't excuse my behavior and I'm not making an excuse for it or anything like that, um, when you're under the influence, you're under the influence. That's why they say don't do shit under the influence because you're not being you. You're not being rational. You're not thinking clearly. You're under a spell, right? And we look at it, and when you're in alcoholism, you are under this spell that says this is the only way. This is the only way to live. This is the only thing you have. Sit on the couch, drink the booze, do your life, drink the booze. You have to have this. And that's what alcohol wants to tell us. And sometimes it even tells us that for the first year sober. Like throughout your
Yeah.
first year, I know people who've been sober for like 30 years and they're like, I still hear that. Maybe it's questionable about what they're thinking about all day, but hey, some people still think that because you have programmed your mind. And when you program your mind to think certain ways and you pour alcohol on top of it, it's a shit storm, right? It's literally a shit storm where you don't think there's a way out because you can't see it. And then you have all these people who can't really help you because they haven't been there, right? The best person to help you is someone who's been there, someone who says, look, I know what it's like and I came out clean. Like if I ever had someone I knew who was in an abusive relationship and couldn't see a way out, I would go find someone who found the way out of it and be like, well, what did you do? How did you get out of it? How did you deal with the feelings of I'm not good enough, this is all I have, he really loves me, or whatever it is, right? And you look at like how did they get out of it? How did they get out of that circumstance? And what Terry and I are talking about is we found a way out of it. Now, for us, it was kind of a forced way, right? It was like, okay, I went to the mental hospital. Terry was like on life support or something crazy like that. We had to be forced into it. And we're here to tell you that you don't have to be forced. There are things you can look at. Just like one of the studies I did after I got sober is I went back through my internet search history with the question, could I have predicted I would have been an alcoholic? And you're damn right you could have. Like the searches I looked up, you could have went through and said, yeah, this guy's going to be an alcoholic. And I want you guys to look at it like, okay, Terry went through this, Marcus went through that, so that other people don't have to, right? We want to catch you before that and say, hey, wake up. This is what's going on. This is what you probably feel like as an alcoholic, and you probably feel like there's no way out. You probably feel like there's nothing that can help you. You probably feel like no one understands you. No one really gets it. No one's situation is quite like yours. But I found, even when I took my pious, pompous ass to rehab, and I thought, well, I'm a businessman. I'm this guy. No one knows what I'm going through. I found out I related to people. I found out that even someone with a completely different upbringing, completely different job, completely different situation, they're speaking my language because alcohol it's not partial. It doesn't care if you're rich, you're poor, you're dating, you're married, you're depressed, you're happy. It doesn't give a shit. What alcohol does in mass quantities, we're not talking about normal people who can go to a party and have a drink. It's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the people who are in the grips who have to drink, who drink continuously, even though their life is getting more and more fucked up each and every drink, right? They keep going with it. And what we're looking at there is a way. And what you have to understand is that your mind has been hijacked. Your feelings have been hijacked. Your body has been hijacked. And it's like there's a master pulling your strings, like the Metallica song, right? And the master pulling your strings is alcohol saying, this is what you're going to do because you need me, if that makes sense to you guys.
Right. Hey, I just want to address one. Jose Perez, you were talking about that you ended up in the ER when you tried to quit. Let's see, you tried for 13 days to quit, and you ended up in the ER. And they said to taper down. And some of you are recommending stuff like take meds but you need. It sounds like you need to go see your doctor
Yeah,
and have your doctor tell you what to do, and then you need to probably do it. You
yeah,
know, there's lots of different ways that people detox, but some of them are dangerous, and that's why you got to get involved with the doctor and have them, detox you safely. For me, I tried tapering down a million times, and that never worked. I'd taper down for a week or whatever, or I'd quit, and the detox symptoms would start to kick in. And when I ended up in the ER, I've said this a bunch of times, but my ER visit was from detox. It was not from actual drinking. It was from the detox of drinking, and it did almost kill me. So it can kill. So just be really cautious. Go see a doctor. Okay, enough of my rant about that.
well, yeah, and,
So,
and it is very dangerous because you have trained your body that this is what you have. It's a terrible thing to put in your body in mass quantities. It's not good. Like cigars aren't good in mass quantities or little quantities either, but they don't manipulate my head, which is good. And we have to look at that and say, well, this is literally taking over. And this is literally something that my body now feels like it needs to survive. And I mean, during detox, if you guys want to talk about what that's like, I heard things. I thought I saw things. I thought I was going crazy. Everything spun. I felt like shit. I was shaky. My blood sugar was probably like really, really low. Um, and I felt like I was going to die. And I'm glad that I had medical help around me. I'm glad I was in the hospital that day because who knows what would have happened left to my own devices, right? When you're in a state, like when you get sober, one, you have to remember you're very vulnerable and you're very scared because it's like, okay, I'm vulnerable because I'm facing the world without alcohol. And that's the scariest thing. That was the scariest thing for me. I was like, how am I going to face the world without alcohol? How am I going to wake up without alcohol? How am I going to live without alcohol? And I literally, I didn't know. And I kind of equate sobriety to learning to live again, right? You're learning to live again. You're taking baby steps and you're saying, how am I going to get through this day? All right. When this bad thing happens, how am I going to get through it? When I get in an argument, what am I going to do? When something bad happens, what am I going to do? When I feel this way, what am I going to do? What am I going to do at my daughter's wedding? What if they have champagne? Am I going to be the only ass not drinking it? That's how we think. Now, it doesn't mean you're an ass. I mean, no one even gives a shit except you. And that's the thing you got to look at is no one really gives a shit but you. And if they do give a shit and say you need to be drinking, then maybe get some new friends for a while. That doesn't mean you have to like shit can everything, but take care of yourself first because this is something that's serious. This is something that ends in death a lot of times. And we got to deal with it the right way. Okay.
well, there's lots more advice on what to do for detox, and once again, I go back to seeing a doctor. A lot of advice that I heard. I looked on the internet. I talked to people about how to detox. I did all sorts of that stuff, and none of it worked. Um, what worked was going to the hospital and getting medically detoxed.
Yep.
So I would definitely be leery of following just advice from people that are not doctors. Definitely a dangerous thing to do. This is life and death.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. And always talk to your doctor because, I mean, the worst thing they're going to do is tell you what to do. It's probably good advice.
Yeah,
They went to school, we didn't, you know. And you didn't, and you don't know. And they deal with these people all the time. Like, they know what happens. They know when you're drunk. And they'll be like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And don't be afraid of them judging you. Like, we need to get past our pride of being judged as an alcoholic, and we need to look at it like anyone who drank as much as I did would be an alcoholic because that's how chemicals work, right? And I changed my life philosophy when I got sober, And I started to really have compassion for people, saying, "Hey, if I grew up like you, and I thought like you, and I did what you did, I'd be where you're at, and I'd think how you think. We are all a product of our programming. We are all a product of what's happened, and here we are. Now, once you realize that and you wake up, you're like, wow, I was a product of alcoholism. I was a product of my upbringing. I was a product of whatever. Now, we can look at that and we could say, oh, man, that sucks. Let's have another drink. As they say, pour me another drink. When you look at it as a victim, that's going to take you down that rabbit hole. But when you look at it as, hey, now I've kind of woken up to it, and now I see what was going on, and now I see that everything was a program, and now I'm going to make a new program. And when I got sober, I said, I'm going to make a new program for my life. I'm going to make a new program in terms of how I think, how I feel, how I react. And it wasn't a program that was in a book or anything like that. It was just something that I was like, this is how I'm going to live now. This is what I'm going to do every single day instead of drink. This is what I'm going to do every day to not drink. And we start to get out of it, and we start to get better, and we do heal. And if you came to me 5 years ago and you said, Marcus, in 5 years, you're going to have a completely new life. You're not going to need to drink, and you're going to feel good every day, I would have said, you are absolutely full of shit. You do not know what I'm going through. You have no idea what I deal with. You don't know what I feel. Get out of my house. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. And maybe someone's out there who can't see it. And right. I don't know if your life's like when we talk about life getting better, people automatically think win the lottery, fit in the bathing suit. You know, we think external physical things. But the funny thing about how I got sober was when I got sober, I actually came very close to losing everything. Very close. I had to sell my house, or I sold it drunk. I don't know if I had to or not. Things weren't going good, so eventually I probably would have had to. And I was brought to what I considered a low. And it wasn't like peaches and roses and wonderful stuff, and people didn't automatically start treating me nicer. What I did was I reprogrammed my mind, and I said, I'm going to look at this stuff different. I'm going to look at it different, because if someone's going to, maybe doubt me if I'm sober, they have every right to, because I was a drunk, and I lied about it. Of course they're going to think that. Now, am I going to take that and be like, oh, you don't know a damn thing. I'm going to go drink because you think I'm drinking anyway. No, I didn't look at it that way. You have to literally look at the way your mind works, and you have to reprogram it little by little. Listen to talks, read books, go to meetings, figure out what works in your mind, and fill it with that. And fill it with that as much as you spent your day around drinking. Because I spent probably 8 hours, 10 hours a day thinking about or consuming alcohol. That's a lot. So I had to go and be like, okay, I need to do the opposite of it, which is important. All right, so let's take some of these. Sahil says, I refuse to be a victim. Good. And don't be a victim of being a victim either. Sometimes that does happen.
Sahil also said just a little bit above that. So you'll never, ever have one drink, like ever, ever? I can't answer that for myself.
I don't think I can either.
Probably not for a while, but you never know.
I'm planning on not drinking forever. I don't need to drink. Like I've found, I look at it as like I think I've had enough. Like what is it I need? Like, do I need to try it? I mean, I've already tried it and didn't work so well. Like, what is it? I would look at that and say, what is the hang-up? Because therein lies the problem. And we don't need to quit drinking for the rest of our life. We just need to quit today and tomorrow and another today, right? Every day, every year is a succession of days. And I stopped counting. I don't know how many days it's been. I think I stopped counting at like 90 days because that was my goal, was get to 90 days. And we have to look at it like, why am I so hung up on this? Like, what is it? Did alcohol really do that good for you? Was it really that amazing? And like, if we talk to Megan was like, okay, on Saturday I drank, and I decided to get back up on the horse. I was like, there we go. She said, I felt like I wanted to drink to prove to myself again why I don't want to drink anymore. Like my mind needed to do it one more time. Now, Megan, I'd like to ask you, did the house shake? Did Jesus come down from the heaven with a ray of clouds when you drank and you felt great and this was like what you've been searching for your whole life? Chances are probably not. Chances are it's all built up in our head and then we have it. It's like, oh, fuck, I had it. Well, that sucks. And then you have two things to do. You could do like Megan did and say, screw this. Or you could be like, well, I had one. I might as well have another. I mean, I already fucked up anyway. And that's the tricks our minds play on us. And it's playing this thing not because it's great, not because it's wonderful, because one drink doesn't do a damn thing for an alcoholic, let's be real. Not a damn thing. Not even the stiffest, strongest drink. It's still not going to do that much for an alcoholic. You'll be like, yeah, that was pretty lame. Okay. I need 10, right? That's just how we are. So we got to look at it. Megan said, no, it wasn't even fun. It was stressful trying to pretend I hadn't drank in front of people. Like, so it was a bad experience. Like, it sucked. And that's what we're holding on to? Like, I'm not holding on to it anymore. I don't care if I don't drink the rest of my life. Doesn't matter. I'm not missing anything. I've had plenty. I've probably drank more in the 4 or 5 years that I was drinking alcoholically than most people drink in their entire life.
Yeah.
And probably 10 times as much. I drank a lot. Like I was going through a keg every 4 days plus hard stuff, which I think I've pretty much tried it all, right? I think I'm good. You know, the whole idea of you just want to try one. You know, even now, because now my thing, I liked craft beer, and now there's a whole bunch of different types of craft beer.
Yeah.
But am I really missing anything? I mean, they all taste the same. And if you really look at it, it's not really the taste. Like, I liked Fat Tire, which I'm a cook, and Terry, you might get this. Fat Tire tastes like green beans.
Right.
Like, it totally tastes like it. Negro Modelo, I like that. Tastes like bananas. It's weird. Like it does. It's just the weirdest thing, and it's not all that great. Be all end all. I used to think I wouldn't be as good of a cook when I didn't drink. Like I literally thought that. Like, oh, I'm not going to be a good cook. I'm a good cook because I drink. Yeah, I ignored the times I freaking burned the like easy to make meals, but you know I was great. I actually found that I'm a way better cook now that I don't drink. I actually get to taste all the flavors and
Right.
get to experiment and be sober when I cook and not burn myself, which I did my fair share of times.
Me too. And I'm a professional.
Yeah, exactly. He's a professional chef. But those are the things that our mind tells us, and me and Terry are here to tell you they're not true. And Megan's here to tell you it's not true. Like your mind's playing tricks on you. Why? Because it's been hijacked to think that alcohol is a way of life. And it is a way of life. It's the way of life sitting on the couch watching Dr. Phil being miserable. It's the way of life, like literally laying in your office. I had an office built in my backyard, and I would go out there and I'd lock the door, and I'd drink my ass off, and I'd sit and cry to music for hours, like 5 hours, and I'd fall asleep in there. And it wasn't even a nice office like I have now. It was like an old rickety shed. It was okay, sheetrocked and everything, but it was terrible, you know, and you got to look at that. Jose says, do AA meetings work? Anything will work if you really want to get sober.
Yep.
Like some people read the Bible, some people go to church, some people go to AA. I chose to listen to a lot of tapes. I did AA in the beginning because they said 90 meetings in 90 days, and I was like, if you tell me that I need to walk barefoot backwards a mile every day, I'll do that because I would do anything to get sober because alcohol wasn't working for me. So we got to look at that.
Yeah, Jose, you know, a lot of people, they tend to just pick one thing and try and do that. And I would pick everything. Do as much as you possibly can for sobriety. and start to figure out what's going to work. And when you try each thing, like maybe you try meetings, don't just try one, try five or six. Or there's another thing called Life Ring. You could try a bunch of those, or online. Or there's probably meetings where if you're near a big hospital, there's just group meetings there. Stuff like that. Do everything you can. You got and start to figure out what worked. I did a couple things in the beginning, and it kind of refined into what I do. And this is one of the things I do for my sobriety is these webinars. But that's that's what I found works for me. So give it a try. Give it.
Sahil's got an interesting one. He says, I find it difficult being romantic sober. Um, when I drank, I thought I was brilliant, and I'd take my notepad around with me every day, and I'd write things down, and I'd be like, it's freaking gold, man. This is great. And then I'd sober up, and I'd read it, and I'd be like, what the freaking hell was I talking about? And I would challenge that it's not difficult to be romantic sober. You just think you're more romantic when you're drunk because you're looking at it different. You got the rose-colored glasses on. And you're you, whether you have drink or not. And here's the funny thing. The funny thing about the mind and the body is that you can muster up whatever you want without alcohol, which means it's you. And I always tell the story of one time when I was going to lunch and talk about something that was difficult to do as an alcoholic. Going to lunch was difficult. I'd go by myself, and I'd be anxious, and I'd be shaking, and she'd bring my beer around the corner, and the minute I saw it, I stopped shaking. I started to feel better. I started to relax. I hadn't taken one sip of beer. I saw it. My brain produced the result. Your brain is producing the result. And there's weird religious groups who do this thing, and I used to be a preacher, so I saw a lot of weird religious groups, and they do this thing called drunk in the Holy Spirit, and they'll be stone cold sober, and they'll go into church, and they'll whip everyone into a frenzy, and everyone's acting like they're drunk, and they really believe it, which is funny. It's like the mind produces it, and they're falling down, and they probably couldn't pass a sobriety test, but they're totally sober. Same thing with the way you are. Like, I used to think I wouldn't be funny sober. And I was like, well, when I drank, I was pretty much the only one laughing at myself. And now that I'm sober, I'm like, wow, I still am funny. Like, all those things are still me. It didn't go away. I'm just not drunk, which I think is a plus. And I would also look at that as what's happening when you drink is your inhibitions go down. So you're like, okay, now I'm not that afraid of being rejected for my romantic stuff or whatever it is he was dealing with. And that's what's happening is your inhibitions are down. And what you got to learn to do is to be comfortable with yourself no matter what. Like, hey, I'm going to do this. This is the way I am. And if people don't like that, I can either change the way I am or maybe find a group of people who do like that, right? I'm rambling, but we'll go on.
Franco, you said, do I have a problem if I just binge once a month? Everything else is fine. That's up for you to decide, Franco. Um, I can't binge. I was never a binge drinker. I know some people that do consider themselves alcoholic and they are binge drinkers, but really, I just suggest to people as a causing negative consequences in your life. That's something to think about. Another thing to think about is the fact that you're on this webinar wondering if you are. Sometimes that's a sign. Sometimes people are just curious as to alcoholism. And maybe you saw the title here, Alcoholism Sucks. Well, what sucks about it? So maybe you're checking that out. But it really is for you to decide.
And I would also say binge drinking sucks.
Yeah.
Like, we binge drank all the time. Like,
Yeah.
that's the difference between an alcoholic as a binge drinker and a binge drinker is we were binge drinking all the time. So a binge drinker doesn't have the benefit of like drinking the next morning and not having hangover, right? So that would suck, right? And I would look at the benefits of it. Like, what is it doing? So you go out and you binge drink, or you stay home and you binge drink. What's it doing for you? How do you feel the next day? Why do you feel the need to watch a show about alcoholism? I would guess that there's some alarm going off in your body and in your mind saying, this probably isn't right. It's probably not right. And look at that, because oftentimes I think you could probably consider me a binge drinker before I became a full-fledged alcoholic. Like, I would drink normally, and then I would binge, and I'd be like, shit, that sucked. I don't feel good. And then it started to get more and more, and then I was like drinking around the clock. So it could be the warning signs of something more. Could be. I don't know. But I would look at that in your life and say, do I want it to get as bad as Marcus and Terry got? And at what price? Like, at what benefit to go out and act silly or forget about things? Like, I actually found ways sober to completely forget about things and completely not worry about stuff, which is great. Like, I could sit out there and I could have my whole life caving in. Like, last week I had an employee that was not a good situation, and I had to fire them, and it was difficult because I don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. I want people to do their job and do good and get paid and make more and do really well. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, if this was 5 years ago, I would have been at the bar long before. I would have had to deal with this drunk. And now I'm like, case closed. This is what it was. No hard feelings. It was what it was. And now we move on. And I find that my ability to deal with life is so much nicer now. So much better. I mean, night and day. Just the ability to rationalize and the ability to look at things for what they are instead of catastrophizing everything. As an alcoholic, I catastrophize everything. It's always the end of the world. Like, you would have thought I was freaking Chicken Little. At the end of the world, everything's over. It's all collapsing. And now I don't have to be that way, which is cool.
Right.
All right.
Salil says, what will you tell your kids if they start to drink? Would you allow them? And now I don't have kids, and Marcus does, and he can definitely address this, but I do work with a lot of people with kids that are alcoholic. And some have adult kids or teenage kids that are also alcoholic or that are having their issues. And generally, they try usually kids of alcoholic parents that are in a program know about the program. But I don't know any of the parents that don't allow their kids to drink. They just try to make sure they're educated about it, and that they're open, honest with their parents, and they let them kind of go on their own journey.
Yeah. And what I did, because I've already talked to them about it, because they're teens now, and that's when shit starts to happen. And I told them, one, no matter whatever happens in your life, if it has to do with a substance, there is no judgment. No judgment at all. You come to me, there is no judgment. So that's number one. Number two is educating them on how their mind works, understanding, hey, this is how the mind works, and I could see this mind that was similar in mine, and I'm not pigeonholing or saying you're like me or anything like that. I'm just saying these are the things to notice, right? These are things to watch out for. And if your first drink is like magic and you feel awesome and it takes your anxiety, that might be something to worry about, right? That might be something. Now, am I going to sit there and say no drinking, no nothing? Not at all. Like, I am fine with that. If my kids want to come over when they're of age and, they have wine at Thanksgiving, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Sometimes people come over and I don't mind it being in the house. I don't mind being around it. Doesn't matter to me. But if there is someone that I feel has an issue, I would gently confront them, and I'd be like, hey, this is what I've noticed, and this is what I've went through. Because here's the thing. There's a term, I don't know who thought of it. I heard of it through some counselor people, and it's called transderivational search, which means when I tell you a story, your mind can't help but relate it to yourself, right? Even if I tell you a story about something that you never even thought of, somehow, some way, your mind's going to relate it to yourself. And you can do much, much more by sharing your story of what happened than pointing fingers about what someone else is doing.
Yeah.
right? Like the most powerful thing to me when I went to rehab wasn't the guy sitting there saying, you're fucking up your own life, you're drinking. That wasn't the powerful thing. The powerful thing was people like Terry who came up and they're like, man, this is how I felt, and I hid the drinks, and I was depressed, and I felt like I couldn't live without it. I was like, wow, Terry makes sense. I see myself in his story. And while Terry wasn't coming up to me being like, you need to stop this, you little shit, he was just sharing his story. And that is going to be more powerful than anything you could ever do, is sharing the story of what you went through and what it was like for you. And that would be my advice to people. That's what I'm planning on doing with my kids. That's what I've already started doing, is saying, hey, one, no judgment. I will never judge you for being under the influence of a substance or can't stop a substance. Never. Why? How could I judge them? How could I judge anyone on this call? How could I judge anyone having gone through it myself?
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing, is love and no judgment. And I don't think if you really love, you can have judgment. That's my own theory, but all right. Let's see.
King James says, "What about the weekends? It's so hard for me to stay sober." And we get that question a lot. And whatever maybe you go into the same situation every weekend, and it's hard to stay sober. Then maybe trying to find sober activities to do.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been sober quite some time, as have you. If I found a group of people and their life revolved around drinking, and every weekend they drank, and I went and hung out with them, and that was my group of people every weekend, the rest of it was just working or whatever, I would venture to say eventually I would probably end up drinking.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would probably happen. It's like, you put a pig in the mud, he's going to get dirty. That's what happens. You put an alcoholic around enough drinks, I think eventually, if the situation was right, it would probably work on my mind enough to get me drinking. So I would look at, what is it hard about the weekends that's making it that way? Is it the people you're hanging out with? Is it the party, the whatever? And maybe distance for a while and say, I got to focus on me getting sober. Because the weekend, I don't have a hard time weekends anymore. Not at all. Like, weekends are great. My kids are home. Yay, cook food, barbecue. So I don't have that hard time anymore. I even went to, they had a little get-together after some school function, and we were out till 2, and the parents were having normal drinks, like nothing crazy. No one was falling all over. And it was okay to be there. I was like, that's cool. I don't need it. And there's actually another parent there who was talking about it, and I was like, hey, I got this sober channel, and he was asking, why don't you? And I'm like, this is why. And so I would be careful about what you're doing on your weekends.
Yep.
And I think I'm talking too much today, so let's take some of these comments.
Yeah, you're fine. You always talk this much. I just
I
give you
do.
a hard time. You're good. Let's see. Where were we? I kind of. Well, Chef Pete says, I went to the liquor store every morning for breakfast with the shakes, 7 a.m. Man, you were lucky. My liquor store didn't open till 8. But I didn't have to go every day because I bought a big enough bottle the last 2 days. But yeah, that's a typical story. Absolutely. Um, let's see. Cassie says, binge drinking. This is my pattern. Sober all day, and then we'll have 4 or 5 drinks at night. I listen to you guys because I am quitting more and more frequently, and I am slowly getting wins.
Awesome.
Well, good job. Keep on trying. That's what you got to do if you want to quit.
And one thing about wins, some days in a sober life, a win is just not drinking.
Yep.
Like, some days I've had a total shitty, crappy day, and I'm just like, I wish this day would end. And then at the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't drink. That's a win. I put that in the win column.
Man, Chef Pete, you work at a tough place. I got my hours cut this week for cussing in the kitchen. Isn't that what us chefs do? Anyways, I didn't drink. I got a second job. Good job. Way not to drink over it. And I work in kitchens constantly, and it can be high stress. But a lot of jobs can be high stress, and we don't have to drink over it. Absolutely not. And way to stay sober. Cassie, my determination is growing every day to get real and stop this. I am in control of my decisions after all. You're in control of, yeah, you're in control of what your next action is going to be. Sometimes alcoholism will can take over, so you just got to keep moving in the right direction every day, one day at a time.
And I think that's an interesting thing too. I had a disagreement with someone early on when we started this channel, and he was saying you're powerless against the first drink. And I'm like, no, you're not powerless against the first drink, but you are powerless after you have the first drink, right? Because once you have that, it alters your mind just enough to where it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And if you like being in control of your decisions and in control of your life, best thing you can do is not drink, in my opinion.
Absolutely, I agree. Sobriety is my responsibility. Nobody's going to do it for me. Yeah, that's really what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
Linda says, all three of my children do not drink alcohol like I have, as they have seen what it's done to me. Yeah, that's definitely, that happens.
Yeah.
That's good. Great. I don't think, but one thing is I don't think people that drink or alcohol is necessarily a terrible thing. My wife will have a bad day, and I tell her you need to have a glass of wine. But she doesn't drink alcoholically.
Yeah.
For most people in the world, alcohol is not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just for some of us, it will kill us,
Mm-hmm.
and that's me.
And me. There's an interesting one. So Debbie says, "Can you tell me the best way to get past the F-its, the fuck-its as we call it? Bored, hungry, angry, tired." Well, you got to look at like one. I flip the script and I say, "Fuck it to the fuck-its." Like if I go drink, and what we're talking about is if something bad happens in your life that you didn't expect or you didn't want to happen, you say, "F it, I'm gonna go drink." Um, I look at it in my life and it's like, is alcohol ever going to make an effort better?
Right?
Has alcohol ever made a situation better? No, not really. Um, not enough to risk my sobriety. I mean, maybe it made me a little happier or pretend to be happier or whatever, but not enough to risk my sobriety. And I think you'll find that with a new life philosophy, the efforts will change because efforts come from an alcoholic mindset. You're looking at life and you're like, oh, well, that didn't go the way I want. Screw it. I'm going to go drink. It's basically a toddler throwing a tantrum. Basically, I didn't get what I want. F it. I'm going to go drink. Now I look at it and I'm like, well, what I want doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Doesn't really. I'd like to have this. I'd like to do that. I'd like people to treat me this way. The best you can do in life is ask cooperation and do the best you can at what you do. If you don't get what you want, we don't need to have an effort or a pity party and go drink over it, right? And we really need to call it what it is. Like, I was throwing a fit. Didn't get what, poor little Marcus didn't get what he wanted. You can go drink over it? Not anymore, I'm not. I don't get what I want lots of times. Like, there's things in my life where I don't get what I want. Like, it's a life pattern. It's like, this is something in my life. I don't get what I want. And I look at it rationally and I say, okay, do I want to change it? Maybe not right now. Maybe in the future I will. Do I want to drink over it? No. That makes it worse and makes my outlook change. So I'm going to look at that and I'm going to be like, what am I going to do? Right? Because having the efforts and drinking over them is focusing on the problem, not the solution. And if you focus on the solution, you'll eventually get things that make you happy. If that makes sense. Anything to chime in on that?
Well, I was reading comments. Sorry.
What do you do for the efforts? That was the comment.
Well, yeah, right, right. I just try to stay busy, and the efforts, they happened to me in the beginning. They slowly went away. It was a matter of patience and continuing to work on a program. And like I said, just staying busy, trying to figure out what I like to do. When I first got sober, I had no job and really no friends or anything. It was kind of a blank slate. So I had a lot of boredom.
Mhm.
I did make sure I wasn't ever hungry. I made sure I rested when I needed to, and that included getting a lot of naps and things like that. I did have problems with boredom, but I went to a lot of meetings, not just the 12-step kind, but the hospital kind, and I hung out with people that were sober. I did not go to the bars or anything like that. The old drinking friends that I was now finally able to drive to get to, I didn't go hang out with them because I couldn't. It was too dangerous of a situation.
Mhm.
I slowly started to exercise, but that took a while. And I did go to the doctor and get a physical soon after I got sober to find out if I was, hurt myself too badly with anything. And that's really kind of how I took care of it. It's a slow process, and the efforts did come up here and there. And I usually had somebody to talk to about that. And they're like, yep, I've had them too. And it really means a lot when somebody else is going through the exact same thing that am going through, that helps a lot. So that's my thoughts on that. Uh,
We had, let's see, there was one. Where'd it go? Sarah, good to see you here. Always like seeing the hearts in the comments. Nice big welcome message. Okay. Hey guys, I have 49 days sober. Problem is that it seems to be harder day by day to stay sober since last week. How can I turn this? Is this a common phenomenon? A lot of people find it harder sometimes. Sometimes it gets tougher before it gets better. I can tell you what's going to be really hard is if you cave into it, it's probably going to be hard to get back.
yep.
So what I would do is I would deliberately do something every day to feed your mind, right? So like in the morning or at night or whatever, feed your mind with something good. Whether it's a talk, you could at talksober.com. You can, if you want to support this channel, you click on the support button. You get MP3s of all of our talks. You can listen to them when you're out, or you could watch them on YouTube free, whichever way. But if you do want to support it, you can go there and click the button. But yeah, I would deliberately change the way you're thinking by putting new stuff in your mind.
Right. Absolutely. Kane says, I think you're saying 20 days of no booze.
I
20
think
days
so.
no booze, my 20-year anxiety lifting. I have to just work on my social anxiety, as that was ultimately what I used alcohol for. I have no intentions of drinking again. Good job. And 20 days is awesome.
It
Doesn't
is.
matter doesn't matter how little or how much we have. It's well, it does, but it's awesome. Whatever you can do. I drank for 37 years, and I just had that one day when I first got sober, and that was huge for me. And then I got 30 days, and it just kept on growing and growing. And
And oh, sorry. Go ahead.
nope, your turn.
For the social anxiety, I would, instead of trying to fight it, just sit with it. It'll go away. Sometimes I still get it, but I find it is a lot better now. Um, it's going to be difficult because you want to control it. You want to like be like, okay, go away, anxiety. How do I deal with this? But if you just sit with it and you're like, it's just what my body does, chemical reaction, whatever. I find that helps. Someone says he's been sober at 50. He's on day 54. It's a miracle. I still feel weak. My eyes and eye bags are driving me crazy. I would say that's probably a lack of sleep. Maybe get a good sleep schedule. Drink lots of water. That's probably what it is. I'm not a doctor though. And maybe be like, hey, dude, what do I do about these? Um, and they'll figure that out.
I did read that alcohol affects every cell in your body. So who knows? Many
Yeah.
things can happen. And when you quit alcohol, it's you're detoxing everywhere, I guess.
And I think your cells change every 7 years. Like every cell is changed. I think I read that somewhere, which is kind of cool. You know, it's like we're constantly changing and growing, and it will get better. Um, and who knows? Maybe you just got eye bags. I know some people in my family, just what they have. That's cool. Um, so yeah. Okay. Could be in denial about aging. Me too. I'm gonna be 40 this year. Don't want to admit it, but hey, whatever. I'm sober in 40. It's better
Your
than being
kids,
drunk in 40 or drunk and dead at 34, which is where I was headed.
old man Marcus.
Megan says, Eric, yes, that's the danger zone of sobriety the first 90 days. Yes, I agree. Because your brain has been rewired by the alcohol and it takes some time to overcome. Yeah, 90 days is like, I'm glad I went to 90 meetings in 90 days because I needed them. So, yeah. Javon says the 15-minute trick really works. Yeah, that's a life changer. When someone edges you to drink or you feel like drinking, wait 15 minutes. It'll usually go away. If it doesn't, wait another 15 minutes. Like, you've had a lot to drink. I'm sure you could go a couple of days. Like, you'll probably be all right. All right. I think that's about it for today. Any last-minute burning questions or desires or anything like that? Happy birthday. I'm not going to be 40 till November, so thank you, though.
Right on. Good job on all your sobriety. It's great to hear all your comments today. And keep on seeing us every week.
All right, cool. And if you guys do want to support the show, go to talksober.com, click the button that says support the show. It's like less than you spent on beer, cheap beer. I know it's less than I spent on cheap beer. Probably less than I spent on wine a night. And you'll be helping us spread the message and everything, which is really cool. Someone says Terry looks like Robert Downey. That's
I
a
haven't
pretty good
got that one
compliment.
yet.
Yeah. I always get.
You look like Burt Reynolds.
See, you get all the good ones. I always get Sean Astin. They're like, you look like the Hobbit in Lord of the Rings. I'm like, thanks. I guess that's a good thing. So, yeah, awesome. Stay sober. Make it happen. Good job, everyone. Good job, Megan, for coming back. If for any reason you ever do have a slip, just come back. That's all you could do. Don't wallow in it. It is what it is. We move on.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. Check out talksober.com. Support the channel. We'll see you next time. And by the way, Terry and I are working on a complete sobriety living course. So if you guys are interested in that, just click the support the channel button. Once that's done, you guys will get it. It's going to be really cool. Talk about some things from life. Got some downloads. He's got worksheets, actual worksheets. You guys could have homework about sobriety, which is cool.
That's right.
Which is one of the things that helped me stay sober. So awesome, guys. Check that out, talksober.com. Stay sober. We'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye.